So let's talk about the Mendip Marauder then from the weekend. Race was on Saturday, today's Tuesday, and didn't want to film immediately after the race because there's lots going on in my mind. Body was in a state, but things are always quite raw after you've exerted yourself physically like that. But I've had a few days to settle in, and I've spoken to a few people about events and how things went, and you know what? I am damn pleased with how that race went. For my first ever ultra finish, I should say, because I did enter a race last year that wasn't long enough, but it was meant to be there anyway. This was hot, it was humid, it was dry, it was dusty, it was everything I could have hoped it to be. And I'll give you a, not blow by blow, but I didn't film an awful lot of footage, and there's good reason for that, or in my mind it's good reason for that. So I'll give you sort of a blow by blow run through of how things went. But first, take a look at the footage from the race, for what I actually filmed, and we'll catch up in a few minutes. Good morning, wonderful world of YouTube, and welcome to the Mendip Marauder 50k. We've got it, we're here, we've made it. First race of the year, beginning of August, and got a bit of nervous anxiety kicking in. More so for the fact that A, this is my first race, but B, more correct, I've had a bit of an injury. And I haven't run this past week, and I'm just doing a bit of a warm-up now, and I still have a bit of a niggle, but it isn't as bad as it was last week, so we're just going to have to play this by ear and see how it progresses. But not a lot more we can do. It's basically an overtraining injury. I've had a sports massage this week, I have stayed out of the gym, I haven't done any running at all, I've done a bit of walking this week, rested. So yeah, there's nothing more that can be done now. It's race day. We're going to go out conservative, see how it manages, and yeah, 30 miles in the Mendips today. It's bloody warm already, something like 23-24 degrees now, so it's going to be something like 27-28 degrees by the end of the race. I'm hoping to come in between 4.5 hours and 5 hours today, which would be lovely. But so with this leg, we're just going to have to see how that plays out, but we'll get some nice footage along the way, and yeah, happy race. First big climb of the day done, an ongoing sort of mile and a half hill it felt like. I'm glad that's done. Beautiful views though. Long way to go, but feeling good so far. Long way to go. Nearly there, we're nearly there. Hey, job done. So we're heading over 20 of those big lumpy bits. Yeah. Which ones? Excellent. This is the first of two pretty big hills. So 600 feet hills back to back. There's loads of flies up here too. It's hard work getting up here, I'll tell you that much. But otherwise, feeling pretty good. I think we're about a third of the race in. Yeah, 10 miles in. Looking good so far. This hill is tiring though. So some footage, but not a huge amount, and the main reason for that was I was way too focused on survival, and survival was the main word from relatively early on. Race started quite well, was kind of sticking with the leaders because there was a couple of leaders who had run the race before and we got a coach from the finish to the start, and I was sort of eavesdropping conversations, and people were talking about route marking and how difficult it was to follow routes, and how the company have got a bit of a history of not being as accurate as they could be with actually helping runners to find where they're going. So I hung with the leaders, and actually there became a bit of a theme, a recurring theme, as you'll find out as we go through the run through of events. But the first mile, we as the lead sort of 5 or 6 runners peeled off to the right, up a hill, round the top of a section, and then back down to rejoin a bunch of people who went straight across the bottom. So that was a bit of a annoying start, but not as annoying as how other parts of the race unfolded. So the first few miles were actually not too bad, a couple of flattish miles, and then we hit the first real climb, which was a bunch of steps at around mile 3 or 4, and that's where things started to feel a bit more serious. In the week leading up to the race, I was quite unsure about whether I'd even be racing. I picked up a overtraining injury, and essentially my right leg stopped working. And I say it like that because Monday and Tuesday after my final long run, which was only 13 miles, I could barely walk. I literally had to drag my butt out of bed, and things just were not looking good. I had a sports massage with my therapist on the Wednesday. She confirmed there were no injuries, but everything had basically gone stiff, tightened up. Adductors and abductors were shot, hamstrings were shot, calves were shot. So she did what she could to try and relax everything, but even up until the Friday, I was pretty stiff, and it was touch and go whether I should even turn up to do the event. As it turns out, I did turn up. The first run I did last week was my warm-up, as you saw in the clips just now, which sort of confirmed that things were okay but not okay. But things started to ache a little bit on that first climb, and so I slowed off. The leaders went off, and there was the first bit of downhill shortly after that. So I caught up with a few people, and actually we started to work together as a bit of a group, and actually that was superb because we were all on similar paces, we were all with similar ambition, and we could work together. And so we stuck together for the next few miles, got into the first checkpoint. At that point, I kind of became a bit obvious that my heart rate was sky high, but the pace was conversational, and so that's where I kind of started to think that things weren't quite right. So it was either tiredness, or it couldn't have been exhaustion because I hadn't run that week, but it was fatigue from not running that week, or temperature, or nutrition, or whatever, but things were not quite working out as they should have done. But anyway, we got to the aid station, we got some bits and pieces set off, and navigational error number 2, we got lost in a field. That allowed some of the people behind us to catch up a little bit, and we started working together as a slightly bigger group. There was 4 of us at this point, and started working our way towards the biggest climbs of the race. Mistake number 2, we missed a turn that missed a 600-foot climb, which was the first of the 2 steepest climbs, which were meant to be 2 climbs back to back. We missed a turn to go for the first one, stayed on the main road, or stayed on the lane, and actually that lane then took us to where the second big hill started. So we rejoined the course there, and that was without knowing. This was only after the race that I realised that we'd missed that turning, when you look at Strava flyby. And so actually we found ourselves in the lead at this point, purely because we'd shortened the route by a little bit, and everybody else had gone up and over the first hill. These guys all shot off on this hill. This is where learning number 1 comes in for me, that I need to work on my power hiking abilities. Like, Forest of Dean has a plethora of trails. We can go out and be on so many different trails, but in reality we don't have any real steep trails here that are testing enough to need to power walk, and so I need to spend a bit of time in the gym doing some power walking and actually learning how to do that efficiently. So these guys left me, and then from about mile 10 right through to the end, I was in no man's land. I was on my own, and that in itself brings around some challenges. I like running on my own. It allows me time to think, but actually in a race situation it doesn't help. It makes it really difficult. It makes it really tough mentally to keep going. So we carried on, got to the next checkpoint. I can't remember. It was the next. Got into the next checkpoint. I caught up again with the guys that I was running in the group with. They were just setting off from the checkpoint after having a slight misroute themselves, and that's where things really started to get tough for me. So the aggravation that I'd had in my leg came real into force between miles maybe 18 and 21. There was a couple of hilly sections. I got absolutely dusted by who turned out to be the eventual race winners going up this hill, and I literally walked for 3 or 4 miles. I got to the last checkpoint at mile 20 or 21. I remember saying to the checkpoint there that I was done. I felt rough. I didn't feel like I wanted to carry on at that point. I just wanted the race to be finished. Lay down for a little while, had quite a lot of water, some fruit, gathered my thoughts, and I basically asked how far there was left to go. They said it was 9 miles, and so I pulled my big boy pants up and I set off, and I am so glad I did, because everything came back. I had a couple of moments where I walked, I power walked, but for the most part I had energy, I had enthusiasm, I had desire, and I cracked on. And whilst I wasn't pulling any fast splits, I felt in my body that I was doing everything that I could to keep moving. And that's another big thing, that I did not stop. There are a couple of moments where I paused just to sort of regather life and to hit my legs a little bit and get things to put things back into perspective, but I didn't stop in that race. And it was such a good feeling, like the exhilaration that you get from knowing that you're physically ruined but pushing on. That is a feeling that you can't recreate, and it was only after the race that I started to actually think about it and appreciate just what I'd achieved. Looking at the Strava flyby again, I was in 8th place up until mile 26, where I took a wrong turn, and in that short amount of time that I took the wrong turn, I got overtaken by 3 people. I must have only gone off route by a quarter of a mile, half a mile at the very most. And so that made it quite an exciting finish, because I could see the guys ahead of me, and for the last 3 miles I felt like I rallied, and I rallied big time. I was catching them up again. I made a decision to re-find the course as I felt it was sort of the true thing to do. Other people carried on along the main road. It was a decision that I probably shouldn't have taken, but I did. As if I'd have stayed on the road, I'd have caught at least 2 of these guys and finished in the top 10. But as it turns out, I crossed the line in 5 hours and 20 minutes, 11th place, absolutely beaten to a pulp, but had the best feeling I've ever had in my life. Like, literally, I could not put it into words how I felt by the time I'd finished that race, knowing everything that I'd been through during that race, the ups, the downs, the emotional roller coaster, the physical strain, the physical challenge, exertion. I was over the moon, and on reflection I could have done a few things differently. I could have done a few things smarter. Nutrition was on point. I'll do another video about the nutrition that I used. I tried something new out on the day, which isn't always advisable, but I did anyway because I had no choice. I was waiting for delivery of the gear that I bought, so I'll do another review on the nutrition that I had and the nutrition plan that I followed. But I can call myself an ultramarathon runner now. and that is a very pleasing feeling when I've been working towards this day for a while. But you know, I've been waffling on for a while now, guys. I appreciate if you've got this far in the video, then it is much appreciated, because you've listened to me chat rubbish for a while. But I wanted to share my feelings and my emotions on this race. I haven't been in the right place mentally in the training for this race. It's been a bit hit and miss. I didn't know what to expect. I've got lots that I've learned from this race, lots that I can take into future races, yeah, I mean, over the moon. Seriously, over the moon. I am delighted. And we'll catch up again later in the week. I am not going to be running now until at least Thursday, possibly Sunday. I just want to make sure the body's fully recovered before I start putting any stress on the legs again. These injuries have come and gone over the last week or so. There's a bit of a niggle still in my calves, in particular in the back of my knee, but recovery has been ace. My thighs, my quads, my hammies, they're fine. Feet are fine. So we're just going to see how life plays out this week, and take it from there. But we'll talk a bit more later in the week about what's next, and stay tuned for more trail running. Happy running, guys.